All right, so let's get back to the sex bombing uh, and get back to M. So, in the previous video, I left it off where I had that first kiss with her and how it just was so magical and how I just kind of fell instantly in love with her. And it didn't even really seem like infatuation because we had a lot of other stuff going on. And um, it's kind of hard to talk about this relationship because it affected me so much after, like, for a lot of years. And it really kind of drove my drinking, drove me into the ground, or I drove myself into the ground. I mean, I had a part in it too. I have to, you know, I have to be honest about that. I was kind of selfish and self centered and, full of some other character defects then, also, and I still am. Not, not in the same way anymore, but I still have some character defects for sure. But so, anyways, Em would come over. We would shoot weddings together. We would do family portraits together, and then we after the family would leave at sunset, we'd linger at the beach and walk hand in hand down the beach and kiss, and there was like a little rock jetty there, or we would just hang out like boyfriend and girlfriend, and then she would come over to the dark room, and we'd go in the dark room and you know neck, and I'd feel her up, we'd make out, and there was something about the dark room that was really cool for that. I don't know. I'd spent a lot of time in the dark room making prints and stuff, and it's kind of a lonely experience when you're in there by yourself. So if you can drag a woman in there, it gets pretty interesting. And there was a gal that kind of reminds me of a gal I knew in college named Summer, and she loved to have sex in the dark room, and I guess maybe she opened that door a little bit there for me, but just talking about the darkroom door, but the light-proof darkroom door. But you know, so she would come over maybe 2 or 3 times a week. We'd go in the dark room, and it was all like Victoria's Secrets and perfume, and she was a pretty petite blonde, and I had this stool in there that was like perfect. I had this like fishing tackle box that I had made myself out of wood, and it was the right height for stuff. It just was. There was all the apparatus that was necessary, even though there wasn't a bed, and there was just like the excitement level was so high. It was so high. It was like that dream, the sex I'd always dreamed about, or always wanted to, and I'd always, uh, like, well, not always, but with this other gal I had been with, I was just in a dry desert of no sex. And then the sex that we did have was just kind of pathetic, or at least in my mind it was. And I think I was like, say, 32, 33. So I was ready for something wild, uh, and then, like, say, she would have me meet her at the mall, in the parking garage at the mall, and we'd make out there in the parking garage. I remember one time we got kicked out by security, and but it was fun, and it was even fun getting kicked out, for having sex in the car. It was pretty awesome, really. Then she would have me meet her at the movie theater. We'd meet inside there, uh, like actually in the theater. Like she'd already be sitting in there, and then I would, find her in there, and you know, we'd kiss, and I'd feel her up, and I'd get a BJ and that kind of thing. And wow, it was just awesome. Not just kind of the whole being secretive thing too. Because she was married to that golf pro guy. And well, whenever he would go out of town, she'd have me come over there to her place, and she'd make me these fabulous ribeye steaks and asparagus and baked potatoes, and she really had a knack for a ribeye steak. And she had a studio there and a backdrop, and we'd make love on her backdrop, and she'd let me take naked pictures of her. And that was really the first time I ever took any naked pictures of a girl. And I had always wanted to, but I don't know. I just didn't know how to get that going or anything. And I haven't really since either. Well, maybe there was a couple, but I actually would. I think I would have been a pornographer if I would have saw like a clear career path to it or something. Because why not? you know. But it just never came my way. And kind of like cocaine never came my way either. But I'm sure if it would have, I would have done it. I probably still would if somebody happened to catch me at the right time. But uh, so let's see, where was I? Oh yeah, the movie theater. Oh yeah, her house, the mall, and then I remember there was this place called the Lemon Tree Inn. This little, I don't know if you'd call it a motel or a hotel. I think maybe a motel. And she'd have me meet her there, and she would have like some fabulous lingerie, like strawberries and chocolate and champagne and stuff like that. And then we would just have really like that kind of sex that you just kind of dream about. Uh, and I could probably just go on, if I let myself think about it. Like I had a canoe, we'd go out in the canoe in the Everglades, and we'd make love in the canoe. Uh, there was the Ritz Carlton there when we were working weddings. There was like a secret bathroom downstairs. It wasn't really a secret, but it was kind of like nobody knew about it. And the Ritz Carlton has like really nice bathrooms. And she would grab me by the hand and pull me down there. And I remember you kind of had to go down some steps and everything to get in there. But and then we would just have wild sex in the bathroom during the wedding reception. And I remember how that was like pumping my confidence up. Like it just made me feel so alive and so manly and so just full of life. And it just was elevating my ego at the same time. I was getting like really sort of a pumped up ego from it. And then just starting to think I deserved that. And that kind of thinking there. And uh but I felt like it was more than just the sex. I mean, it seemed like we were really in love. I remember uh a lot of times, like say if her husband was out of town, I would go over and I'd just spend the night there. But I remember this one night where she kind of grabbed me by the both sides of my face and pulled my forehead into hers. And I don't remember what we were saying exactly, but there was this kind of weird, I won't even say weird, there was this beautiful spiritual experience where it almost felt like she mind melded with me, almost like a witch. Or you know it was like she sucked me into her mind for a minute or 30 seconds or something like that. But I really took that as a sign that we were supposed to be together. And so between that and having the photography with her, I just felt like I had really met the woman that I should be with, that her husband didn't deserve her. And so she told me that she wanted to leave her husband and that she had wanted to leave him for a while. And you know I told her that I didn't want to be with that gal I was with either. And so we talked like that. And then, well, yeah, one other thing, there was some other stuff too I almost forgot about. The sex bombing was the sex shop. I had never been in a sex shop previously. And there was one there in town that I would drive by, and I was always kind of wonder. It had like a neon sign in the window, and it's like it was next to a donut shop. And sometimes I go get the donuts, and I'd see that sex shop, and I'd be like, I wonder what is going on in there, what's happening in there. And I always felt like there was something in there waiting for me. And well, anyways, she took me in there one time, and she would do like these kind of leathery outfits with chains, and some pretty cool stuff, really. And I still remember that leather outfit. It had a smell that was a kind of an interesting smell because the guy who had the sex shop, he smoked like constantly in there. So everything that you bought there smelled like cigarettes. And then I had never really had any experience with any of the sex toy stuff or anything, but she kind of opened that door, and I was at once horrified and fascinated with it. I was kind of happy just to even get to try out, like, say, yeah, I don't even know if you're allowed to say it, but just to sort of try out some sex toys on women, just kind of see what it was all about. Get to learn some anatomy, that type of deal. And then there was like some bondage stuff too that started to happen where it's like a little bit foggy now. There would be some drinking involved there too, but I would like kind of tie her up in the studio, and well, some of it got kind of crazy, but it was exciting and fun too. I I wouldn't change that part. Well, maybe I would. I don't know. I wouldn't I wouldn't do that stuff with a woman that I loved anymore. You know. In fact, I had other girlfriends that I made them throw away their sex toys because it made me uncomfortable. But so, anyways, basically, she gave me everything I ever wanted in the sex department, and she gave me so much of it that it it was like a river of sex, basically. And I'm getting a little bit cold and starting to shiver here a little bit. Um, and then one day, there by the drafting table where we had that first kiss, she asked me if I wanted to marry her, and I was really flattered. I was really happy that she asked me to marry her. I told her, because she was married and she had a kid, and I was with that gal, and I had a kid. I wasn't sure. I had to think about it, and then I was gonna take a week and think about it, and then the week went by, and I still couldn't decide, and I was feeling pressure, mostly I think just from myself to decide, and it was making me crazy not being able to decide. So I told myself that I was going to go to McDonald's, order a cup of coffee, and by the time I finished the large cup of coffee, that I was going to decide. So I went up to McDonald's, ordered the coffee. I remember I sat at this little table by the window, kind of in the sunshine, and just tried to think about it, just really think about it and imagine it. And felt hesitant, and I think my intuition was telling me don't. I think maybe there had been some red flags that I wasn't really paying attention to, and it was probably just loving that vagina so much that it was hard to think straight, honestly. And wow, even just thinking about it now, wow, what a wonderful time that was. God, got it. Never to be repeated again, either. Never to be repeated again. Well, there was stuff, but there was never anything that was that passionate, that wonderful. And so anyway, I finished half my coffee. I still couldn't decide. Got down to about a quarter cup. I was like, man, I gotta figure this out. And then I had one gulp left, and I was like, well, I guess I'm getting married because I just couldn't decide what to do, but I wanted to make a decision. So I decided right at that moment. I took that last swig of coffee, threw my cup down, walked out of there, decided to get married. In retrospect, that's probably the worst decision I ever made in my life. And then it ended up costing me my sanity. It cost me my photography career. It drove my drinking. It led to my demise in almost all ways. And then I feel like was a pretty major part of how I put myself here. And then for women, I think, it's a really powerful tool to get you to do what they want, and they know what they're doing. They're not stupid. especially if they find somebody like me who is kind of undersexed and kind of ripe for that, you know? And then I remember, sadly, one of the last times I ever talked to her, she told me that her therapist told her that, and that she had decided or whatever, that our whole relationship was just about the sex, you know? Which it kind of made me feel good on one hand and then horrible on the other hand, you know? So, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, I never got sex bombed again. That was like the B 2 bomber of sex, bombed into just complete submission and adoration. And probably that list just goes on and on. I know this has probably happened to other men. There's some men that are probably lucky enough to be going through it by multiple women. Well, I still say lucky enough because it was like a really great experience too. Damn it. You know? Well, I want to finish telling that story of M and the, you know, how it went after I got married. I was married for 9 months. I had like the I had like the best year of my life, followed by the worst year of my life, with that 9 month being married margin in the middle. But really, actually, as soon as we got married, things went downhill. If I could do it again, I would have just kept having sex with her in the dark room and not gotten married to her and just let that peter out whenever it petered out, you know. Who knows how long I could have gotten away with just having sex with her without getting married, without getting involved, without losing my mind. But I would recommend that to any guy who happens to be getting sex bombed. Just take the sex and then don't surrender. You know, don't get married, don't get involved, uh, don't let it become anything besides sex. I think would be my advice. I have a buddy, this guy that I did the shed for and do some other building for. He's got an open relationship and he's got like 5 different women that come around, but they all know about each other. And I was like, wow, that's genius, man. That guy, I guess because we're here in Mormon country, that was even a possibility, or women would even go for that kind of thing. But I've heard Utah has a kind of a weird swinger scene and stuff too, but I don't know anything about it. Uh, it's been high and dry here for me. That's the thing. But all these LDS gals, especially my age, they're all, you know, it's not like you could go to a bar and pick women up here. It's like a whole different scene. Although there's probably some late night clubs and stuff, but I'm just not into it, you know. But, well, I don't know where if I if I lived up to any expectations with this video, or if I went too far, or if I said too much, or if I freaked anybody out. I hope not. It's just sharing my experience basically, and maybe giving a sort of a warning to other men. And I don't know. I don't really hold it against women. It seems like just another tool in their toolbox, probably the best tool that they have, you know. Definitely the best tool in their toolbox. But yeah, so I'm gonna just leave it there for today. Thanks for listening to me.